Throughout history, the sword has represented far more than just a weapon. It has served as a symbol of power, discipline, wisdom, and spirituality. From ancient battlefields to the tranquil meditation halls of monks, the sword has been both a tool and an emblem. Its significance extends beyond its material form, reaching deep into the psyche, the spirit, and the very core of human existence. The sword is not simply an object of destruction. It is an object of focus, a medium through which we explore our inner selves, confront our fears, and connect to higher truths. At its core, the sword is a psychological tool that requires a deep and intimate connection between the body and mind. Wielding a sword isn't just about physical strength or the art of combat. It is about total mental presence. The act of holding a sword demands unwavering awareness, focus, and precision. In many martial traditions, the sword is the very tool that teaches you to control your mind. It forces you into the present moment, demanding that your thoughts and actions be in perfect harmony. When you hold a sword, the mind cannot wander. It must remain clear and sharp, much like the blade itself. This relationship between the sword and the mind unveils a fundamental psychological truth. The mind is like the sword. It can be sharp or dull, depending on how well you train and focus it. A dull mind, one that is distracted and uncentered, is like a sword that cannot cut through anything. But a sharp mind, one that is disciplined and focused, can perceive the world with clarity and respond with intention. In this way, the sword serves as a mirror for the mind, showing you what happens when you are present, when you are aligned, and when you are unfocused. Part 1. The sword's magnetic powers. Did you know that during Japan's Edo period, samurai believed their swords possessed mystical powers, including the ability to attract cosmic energy? Many samurai viewed their katana not just as weapons, but as spiritual conduits, capable of drawing strength from both the earth and the universe itself. This belief was rooted in the sword's unique ability to bridge the physical and spiritual worlds, embodying a profound connection to the forces that govern all existence. To them, the sword was a living entity, charged with the energy of both their ancestors and the universe. In a more scientific sense, there's an interesting phenomenon. Iron and steel, the materials traditionally used to forge these swords, are ferromagnetic, meaning they can be magnetized. While this fact explains the magnetic properties of swords on a physical level, the samurai's belief in their sword's spiritual magnetism taps into something far deeper. The idea that a sword could attract unseen energies mirrored the samurai's understanding of their sword as a tool not just of battle, but of spiritual alignment and empowerment. On a philosophical level, the sword has long been used as a powerful metaphor for clarity, truth, and enlightenment. Much like how a blade slices through the fog of war, it also symbolizes the capacity of the mind to cut through the illusions that cloud our perception of reality. The sword's edge, sharp and unyielding, represents the clarity of thought required to discern truth from falsehood. For the ancient samurai, the katana was not merely a weapon, it was an instrument of personal and spiritual transformation. To wield it was to embrace the way of the warrior, Bushido, a code that emphasized honor, integrity, discipline, and self-mastery. In this way, the sword became a mirror of the warrior's inner world. Just as the sword's edge must be maintained and sharpened, so too must the warrior's mind and spirit be honed to achieve the highest state of being. The sword, therefore, represents far more than just physical prowess. It is a symbol of spiritual and philosophical enlightenment, guiding those who wield it toward a life of clarity, purpose and profound connection with the universe. Part 2. Swords as instruments of divination and fate. In many ancient cultures, swords were revered not only for their strength in battle, but also for their mystical properties, often used in rituals of divination and fate. In Viking culture, for example, swords were considered to hold divine significance and played an integral role in spiritual ceremonies. These ceremonies, centered around the sword, aimed to invoke guidance or insight, often for crucial decisions that impacted the fate of the tribe or individual. One fascinating aspect of Viking sword rituals involved the practice of sword divination, where warriors or spiritual leaders would study the sword's physical properties to discern omens or predict the future. The sword's balance, its markings, and even the way it rested were seen as signals from the divine realm, offering guidance on the right course of action. This deep spiritual connection imbued the sword with more than just physical power. It became an extension of the divine will, a tool to access hidden knowledge and wisdom. In this sense, the sword transcended its role as a weapon of war, evolving into a sacred object that was used to unlock higher truths and reveal the unseen forces shaping the world. The samurai, much like the Vikings, also saw their swords as symbols of spiritual power and guidance. But for them, the sword was not just an instrument of destiny. It was a mirror of their own character and spirit. The samurai understood that the blade was an extension of their identity, reflecting their inner strength, honor, and discipline. Just as a sword must be carefully forged and maintained, so too must the samurai work tirelessly to cultivate their own moral and spiritual integrity. To the samurai, the sword was much more than a weapon. It was a constant reminder to live with purpose and to act with honor, aligning oneself with the higher principles of Bushido, the way of the warrior. Through this philosophy, the sword served as a spiritual companion, helping to guide the samurai toward higher consciousness and self-awareness, while offering a pathway to personal growth and transformation. It was a reminder that true strength lies not just in the physical act of combat, but in the pursuit of spiritual and philosophical excellence. Philosophically, the sword encourages us to cut through the layers of the self that no longer serve us. Just as the skilled swordsman trains to master his blade, we too must train ourselves to discern the unnecessary parts of our psyche and shed them. The sword teaches us that personal transformation often requires an act of courage, one that involves letting go of outdated beliefs, negative habits, and emotional baggage that weigh us down. It's a reminder that growth and enlightenment come from a willingness to slice through the illusions we hold on to, much like a blade must be sharpened to maintain its edge. To wield the sword, in its deepest sense, is to embrace a journey of self-discovery, discipline, and spiritual purification. Part 3. The sword's surprising role in the Japanese tea ceremony. At first glance, it might seem odd to associate the fierce, sharp katana with the delicate and peaceful Japanese tea ceremony. Yet, in a fascinating blend of tradition, the samurai would often bring their katana with them when attending these serene gatherings. For the samurai, the katana was not just a weapon. It was an inseparable part of their identity, their honor, and even their soul. This sacred sword was much more than a tool of war. It embodied their values, their sense of purpose, and their place in the world. By bringing the katana into the quiet, introspective space of the tea ceremony, the samurai were subtly reminded that their path was not just one of combat and physical prowess. Instead, the presence of the sword emphasized that the way of the samurai was also about discipline, focus, and inner tranquility. The stark contrast between the sword, an instrument of destruction, and the peaceful ritual of tea preparation highlighted a deeper, more philosophical idea: the balance between opposing forces within oneself. The samurai understood that true mastery came not from the violence of battle, but from the ability to control one's emotions, actions, and thoughts, much like the delicate, graceful movements of the tea ceremony itself. Spiritually, the sword held profound symbolism. In numerous ancient spiritual traditions, the sword represents a powerful force that slices through the veil of illusion. It's a tool used to cut away the distractions of the material world, unveiling higher truths and leading the individual toward deeper knowledge and spiritual awakening. In this light, the katana was not merely a physical weapon, but a spiritual one, an instrument that could sever attachment to ego, materialism, and ignorance. Its sharp edge symbolizes the clarity that comes with spiritual growth, the capacity to discern truth from illusion, light from darkness. In the context of the tea ceremony, the sword becomes an extension of the samurai's inner journey. It helps them achieve a higher level of consciousness by reminding them to stay present and to remain mindful of their actions. Just as the blade is honed through continuous practice and refinement, so too is the samurai's spirit, honed through daily meditation, self-discipline, and spiritual training. The sword is not just a tool for physical defense, it is a spiritual tool, guiding the individual toward enlightenment. This use of the sword as a means of spiritual purification is echoed in the way the samurai approached their entire life. The katana was a symbol of their constant striving to shed attachments and old beliefs, much like the process of spiritual growth. In wielding the sword, one is not just defending against external threats, but also cutting away the internal distractions and negative patterns that inhibit self-realization. It serves as a reminder that personal growth requires ongoing refinement and focus, just as a sword must be maintained and sharpened to remain effective. So too must the self be cultivated through conscious effort and mindful practice. Through this lens, the sword is a symbol of transformation. It embodies the idea that to truly live a life of authenticity and purpose, we must continuously work to clear away the fog of illusion and the debris of limiting beliefs. In the hands of a skilled swordsman or spiritual seeker, the sword becomes a tool of liberation, helping us sever our attachments to the ego and guiding us toward a higher state of being. It encourages us to confront our inner demons, confront our fears, and confront the false stories we tell ourselves, allowing us to step into our most authentic self. In the tea ceremony, just as the sword's presence is subtle but profound, so too is the impact of spiritual practice. Just as each moment in the tea ceremony calls for mindfulness, each strike of the sword demands intentionality, focus, and awareness. The sword, as both a physical and spiritual tool, reminds us that true mastery, whether over the mind, body, or spirit, comes from consistent practice, unwavering discipline, and a deep connection to our higher purpose. Through this intersection of the sword and the tea ceremony, we see that the samurai's journey is not just one of outward conquest. It is a path of inner refinement, spiritual awakening, and a never-ending pursuit of wisdom. And much like the sword, our own journey toward enlightenment requires constant sharpening of the mind, heart, and soul, cutting away everything that no longer serves us and aligning with the highest version of ourselves. 4. The blood curse of the sword. In many ancient cultures, swords were more than just weapons of war. They were believed to hold a spiritual essence that was intricately tied to the blood they soaked. The concept of a blood curse surrounding swords is rooted in deep mysticism, with various cultures holding the belief that swords bathed in the blood of enemies or victims would acquire a dark, malevolent energy. This blood was seen not only as a physical substance, but as a conduit for spiritual power, capable of transforming the blade into something both potent and dangerous. In some cultures, it was thought that swords forged with the blood of fallen warriors would carry their spirits, making them almost alive, in a sense. These blades were believed to bear the souls of those they had killed, each swing potentially unleashing not just the sword's physical force, but the will of the spirits within. This belief, while steeped in folklore, speaks to the deeper symbolic role of the sword. The connection between the sword and both life and death imbues it with an incredible amount of power. But this power comes with a price. The sword must be wielded with great respect, for to hold such a weapon is to also hold the weight of the spirits and the energy that flows through it. A sword soaked in blood, according to some legends, could bring bad luck, illness, or misfortune to its new owner, especially if they were not deemed worthy. It was said that only those who had earned the right through honor, discipline, and spiritual alignment could wield such a blade without facing its destructive consequences. The idea of the blood curse serves as a powerful metaphor for the spiritual weight we carry with our actions. Just as a sword can become imbued with the energy of life and death, so too can we become influenced by the consequences of our choices. The act of violence or dishonor leaves a mark on the soul, whether it be a mark of regret, trauma, or karmic debt. Just as a sword carries the spirits of those it has slain, our actions carry the consequences of what we do, affecting our path and purpose. To wield a sword, or any great power, requires mindfulness, discipline, and respect for the forces at play. Without these, we risk losing ourselves to the very power we seek to control. Philosophically, the sword is not just a tool of destruction, it is a tool for self-mastery. Wielding the sword teaches us that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from mastering ourselves. The sword demands focus, precision, and control. It is a mirror for our own lives, reminding us that true power is not about force or aggression, but about channeling our energy with intention. To truly wield a sword is to cultivate the discipline to act with purpose, clarity, and integrity. The sword, therefore, becomes a powerful metaphor for personal growth. Just as a swordsman must continually refine his technique, so must we constantly refine our character, our thoughts, and our actions. The sword teaches us that in order to lead others, we must first learn to lead ourselves. It reminds us that true leadership is not about exerting control over others, but about mastering our own inner world. To wield the sword with wisdom and respect is to align ourselves with higher values and to act in accordance with our deepest intentions. The metaphor extends further. The sword, like our minds, must be honed and sharpened constantly. If we neglect our inner discipline and allow the clutter of the mind and ego to dominate, we risk becoming overwhelmed by the distractions and illusions that hold us back. The sword teaches us to cut through the fog of confusion, to discard the unnecessary, and to focus on what truly matters. Just as a blade must be sharpened regularly to remain effective, so too must we continuously refine our consciousness to stay aligned with our true purpose. In essence, the blood curse of the sword serves as a reminder of the power that lies in our choices, actions, and intentions. The sword reflects the energies we invest in it, and just as it can carry the dark energy of death and destruction, it can also embody clarity, discipline, and spiritual growth. To wield such power responsibly requires mindfulness, self-awareness, and a constant commitment to personal growth. Just like the sword, we have the power to shape our own destinies, but only if we are willing to put in the effort to refine our own minds, actions, and intentions. As we move through life, let the sword remind us that every action has its consequences, and that true strength is found not in power over others, but in mastery over ourselves. If you've found these insights on the deeper spiritual and philosophical significance of the sword compelling, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on more fascinating explorations of philosophy, spirituality, and the ancient wisdom that shapes our world. Thanks for watching.